15 minutes past 11 in East African time, with music by Asha coming through with Bami Dele. Thank you very much for staying with us. You are just in time for us to get into what we now note as our Monday ritual, and that is the journal notes. And we welcome David Owino once again, who is a respected Kenyan broadcast journalist. He's back with us. David, a pleasure to have you on the line. Welcome, welcome.
Good morning. I have never heard that song. That's such a beautiful song.
Isn't it
I've
just
not
pure gold?
taken note of it.
Oh, man.
Taken note of it. It's going into my playlist
I'm
for
so
sure.
happy. I'm so happy you made that discovery because I'm a huge fan of Ashai as well. She's just such a fine singer, singing in Yoruba, and she makes it universal. You know, she makes us like we all understand that language. But yes,
Absolutely.
our journal notes is another language that comes through every single Monday with you and I. And a lot is going on, especially when we look at, just to use South Africa as an example, the anti-illegal immigration group March and March. Well, it looks like it's expected to proceed with its planned nationwide demonstrations. That's tomorrow, Tuesday the 30th. Despite concerns over security and ongoing engagements with government. So I'd
Mhm.
like to get your perspective on this one, David. Of course, we've seen what's been happening, the tussles between the locals and the foreign nationals, and the call for illegal immigrants to leave the country. But it's in the way it's been done that I've been questioning. But do you think that these planned shutdowns appear to be testing the state's ability to respond to organized civil action around immigration, or what do you see?
Right. First of all, I think the problem that we have now in South Africa was presenting a very good opportunity for all of us in the continent to discuss a very serious issue, which is migration and
Mm-hmm.
why people are migrating in the first place and
Yeah.
why they work so hard, go through such indignifying conditions to move to another place. It presented, but the way in which it was handled has made actually the whole continent reduce it to a very simplistic conversation, which is
Mm.
unfortunate. However, what we are seeing um, in South Africa and what the government has said is so similar to what the government of Kenya said last week, and that is that the demonstrations were expected because of the June 25th demos that happened 2 years ago, and the government said in Kenya that it will be a normal day, you go about your business. And I think that's what the government of South Africa also told the rest of the citizens. And the problem that we are seeing here is that it this goes beyond just a demonstration and public order. What the question that the people are asking here is, do we believe that the state is capable of managing the issues that we are raising fairly,
Mhm.
effectively, and according to the law? So it's a legitimacy issue. Do people believe their government? That's the question.
I think you're on point there. But are we speaking the same language here between government and the people? Do we want the same things?
Um, Oftentimes, because the big decisions are being made by politicians.
Right.
When an issue is overwhelming and it does not present an opportunity to put a quick, shiny project, then the politicians either tend to avoid it or they put a quick policy or a quick legislation. But you also know, as I do, that in Africa we have a lot of policies that are not implemented and laws that are not enforced.
Hmm.
So I do not think the language is the same. I do, even if you look at the way in which the government is responding, you
Mm.
can tell, and this is why people are pained. You can tell that they do not seem to understand what people are saying. You're not speaking our language. You don't seem to feel what we are feeling. You don't seem to see what we are seeing, or at least from our perspective. So there's a bit of a disconnect there.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. But I mean, the thing is, the protests are going to happen, right? They've been scheduled, and in
Mhm.
South Africa, protests need to be protected and need to be lawful or legal, as it were.
Yeah.
But once these protests are over, what are the key policy questions that governments across the African region should be interrogating? Because this, as we noted now, is no longer just a South African problem. It's now everybody's problem. So what are the key things that we should be looking at from a government and policy perspective, so that we can move beyond the marches and beyond the debate into something that makes a bit more sense pragmatically?
I agree with you. Success of tomorrow will not be measured, simply by what happens on the street. So many
Mm,
people turned up, or this is the petition that they shared with the government. No,
right.
I think it will be measured by what happens after that, especially in policy. So most of the time, we look at migration purely from the security perspective. We look at it only as a security problem. But if you look across our continent, you'll see that migration is also actually much more a development issue. So there are people who are moving because of conflict. The highest number of migrants that we have in Kenya, for example, are people who are moving from fragile states where there's not been peace for a long time. There's also climate pressures where their livelihoods that they've depended on for a long time have been disrupted. There's unemployment. There's regional economic disparities where you share the same region with countries that have never done anything meaningful for their citizens. And there seems to be some progress happening in your country. And then, of course, there's also the question of family networks. Some of these people live across borders and they want to reconnect with their families. I think what we need to see now is countries moving one step forward and saying, this is the number of migrants that we have documented. This is the number that do not have any documents. These are the major reasons driving migration in this region. And these are the solutions that we propose to take over this amount of period of time. And
Hmm.
this obviously will take more than just one country. It has to be the conversation has to go regional, say SADC, and then COMESA or AU and like that. Because I do not think the population of young people is only growing in one country; is growing all over Africa, and we are talking about transboundary issues here. So they would have to be discussions that go beyond borders. But from where I sit, migration is not the disease. It is a symptom of uneven development that has to be addressed.
And even development and, of course, the engagements that government is having,
So
not ignoring the issues and prolonging, really getting down to it, and stop being so reactionary as government. Really prevent these issues from occurring before they occur, right? I think that's the greatest challenge. We continue our conversation with David Owino, who is a broadcast journalist. We continue after this short break.
Téléchargez l'application Channel Africa sur votre Play Store ou Apple Store afin de pouvoir suivre toutes nos émissions en direct de là où vous vous trouvez. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Tsepiso Makwetla.
So how do you respond to Niger's new penal code, which criminalizes same-sex relationships and imposes prison terms of up to 10 years?
Yes, I think the Niger legal system is responding to what is more or less a clarion call to criminalize natural relationships among people of same sex, and is a response to growing tendency of the West to continue to impose their beliefs and understanding of human rights on the African continent and other developing countries.
That's Dr. Samson Osagi, who's a Nigerian lawyer and former vice president of the African Bar Association. And there are those that are defending it, and many that are saying it's out of order. Where do you sit?
Big continent, bigger conversations. Rise and Shine with Peter Ndoro and Tsepiso Makwetla. 6 till 9 a.m. on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Call us on +27 63 406 9126 and contribute to the conversation.
The Journal with Mmatsheko Mosito.
We're 25 minutes into 10 a.m. in Central African time. Thank you very much for streaming audiovisually with us on our Facebook page. Otherwise, we're available across the African region via satellite on channel PAS10. David Owino continues to join me as we unpack. Listen, we're trying to tackle many problems at once, all right, from a political perspective and also environmentally, when we look at the fact that plastic pollution remains one of the most urgent environmental threats that's facing oceans and ecosystems globally. And experts are increasingly sending out warnings that the focus must shift now from cleanup efforts to prevention at source. So we're having this conversation, of course, following the recently concluded 11th or the recently concluded Our Ocean Conference in its 11th edition that took place in Mombasa, where global leaders and environmental stakeholders gathered to reflect on the scale of marine pollution and the growing challenge of managing plastic waste. So here we are again, David, looking at environmental issues at this level, but I mean, what are the biggest issues here? What are the gaps that we are seeing in the current response around plastic pollution?
Yeah, right. So from the conversations, it's becoming clear that we have been focused on something that is important, but that is not the full picture. So the focus has always been on what we can see, and we're saying if we stop littering, then we solve the plastic problem. But there's a deeper issue, actually two deeper issues here. The first one is that the way our economies are designed, they're designed to produce far more plastic and faster than we designed to recover it. So just to break that down a bit, plastic is cheap. It is lightweight, so you can transport it across continents and still not cost you as much. It is durable and it is profitable. Profitable because even virgin plastic will cost you less. If you speak to any plastic manufacturer, they tell you virgin plastic will cost you less than recycled plastic. And so we are seeing that the incentives to do away with plastic, they remain, the incentives to keep manufacturing plastic, they remain unchanged for years. And then, of course, what came from the conference, which was scary to me, was I have to admit I didn't. Well, I had heard about it, but I hadn't, given it thought. And that is the issue of microplastics. That there's a lot of microplastics, far more than we have ever thought about. And the problem is, you cannot see microplastic by your naked eyes. So while we are solving what we can see, which looks like an eyesore, it's washing to the shore, there is actually things that are washing into our very systems, our drinking water, seafood, agricultural soils, the air, and even human blood and placental tissue. So, that's what really I found scary about the conversations that happened last week.
It is highly disturbing, the issue around microplastics, and you speak about, how these plastics are relatively unseen. They in our food, they in the clothes. I mean, I was watching an insert last night about polyester and the fact that it's not just fabric; it's actually microplastics that sort of come off almost every second as you move, and they get into the bloodstream and cause all sorts of issues. But are there any commitments that have been made? I mean, at a policy commitment level, because that's essentially what you are saying. Are there any commitments that we heard at this 11th Our Ocean Conference that can give us hope that something is being done from the top down?
I think, yes, people are talking about, plastic bans and things like this. But I think we also need to look at the posture of our different economies and where they are and how we are doing things.
Right.
So, for example, yes, I mean, if you speak about consumer responsibility, consumers have responsibilities for sure. Um, but that responsibility is just as effective as the structure that is provided within that economy. I'll give you the example of Kenya, for example. We banned plastic bags. Fantastic thing to do. We do
Wonderful.
not have plastic bags anymore. But if you look at the waste management uh, system in Kenya, how it is, we do. Even if I decided to separate waste in my house, it will still be bundled into the same thing the moment the waste management people come. They pick it as one thing. So if we are to be honest, the truth is the people that collect waste and call themselves waste management, really they are transporters. They are transporting one waste from one place to a dumping site where it is just thrown as one package. So until we have the kind of structure that allows us to separate waste and are able to deal with it as it deserves, then there's no amount of policy that will save us from ourselves. But then, if you also look at producers have leverage. Producers have leverage to produce better quality products that are not going to, for example, wash off microplastics at the easiest trigger or at the slightest trigger. They also have leverage because these are big money productions that can begin to give us alternatives after all these years. Surely there should be alternatives. So yes, we can speak policy, but I think we also need to speak reality and look at where are we as a continent? Where are we as individual countries? And how much does that policy do if the structures remain the same?
100%. Yeah. So there's got to be a meeting point between the two. I mean, awareness is one thing, but commitment is an entire different level. David, I wish we had more time, but thank you so, so much. I think a very urgent discussions that we had today. And yeah, let's keep talking. Hopefully somebody will hear us. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you very much and have a good day.
Absolutely. Thank you, David. Have a wonderful rest of the week. It is 10:32. Let's check in with the latest in sports with Fikile Longwati.
Sports on Channel Africa.
The African Perspective.
First up is football news. Bafana head coach Hugo Broos says he will not in any way influence any decisions taken by his successor. The 74-year-old